the West Bank has suffered, a real obvious uptick in violence. That there have been, I think it's close to 1,000 West Bank residents have been killed by the IDF. Many of them, like always, many of them actually children. Um, and then more recently, there was this attack on the Jenin refugee camp. I remember actually visiting there and spending an afternoon there, and it's just gone now. They just what they're doing in the West Bank is giving it the Gaza treatment. It's just utter destruction. So they killed quite a few people, but then just demolished the whole camp. And then there was a neighboring village. They destroyed that too. And it looks like Netanyahu is going to kind of surge into the West Bank, and there will be more violence there, more destruction. Just yesterday, there's I believe three Israeli buses. They were empty in Tel Aviv, or a suburb of Tel Aviv, blew up. And so a lot of people are speculating that this is a false flag, because immediately afterwards, Netanyahu, pinned the blame on Palestinian terrorists from the West Bank and said he had ordered really an attack on them in the West Bank. It could have been a straight out false flag. Another possibility I just saw, I think this morning, that there was some Israelis, probably Israeli Arabs, they didn't give any names, that were arrested. And it's possible that, this was kind of an act of protest or vandalism or whatever, it's more than vandalism, but that was carried out by some people, perhaps Palestinians, again, who are Israeli citizens. It's not impossible. But if it is, it's a kind of a version of a false flag. I would call it a serendipitous false flag, because, these are obviously not West Bank people. And there's no way that Netanyahu could establish a connection, even before they were arrested. It doesn't make any sense. It's an incident occurs, and somebody's looking for an excuse, like a Netanyahu. He'll seize it and then, and do what he wanted to do anyway. It kind of reminds me of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. That wasn't exactly a false flag. It was actually the captain of a U.S. naval vessel reported that he was under attack, and then later realized he wasn't, and withdrew the report, explained, to his superiors that he had, they had read the situation incorrectly. It was just bad weather. And that's what it was. So he canceled his first report, but Lyndon Johnson decided just to ignore the follow-up statement and just to go with the incorrect report first, and use that as an excuse for launching a large-scale military operation in Vietnam. So I would call that a serendipitous false flag. It's not something that was planned ahead of time, but in essence, it becomes a false flag. It's just used. And that's, so, I think it's some version of a false flag that we're talking about here, that they're using this as an excuse to surge into the West Bank.
Was anybody killed when these buses blew up?
No, nobody was killed. Nobody was injured.
Yeah, makes it a little suspicious.
It doesn't really make sense, even from so I suspect that the Israelis just did it, and it was just an intentional false flag. I can't be certain, of course, but I strongly suspect it. And then I think maybe one other thing that we need to talk about in the Middle East is the question of Iran. And they had promised to retaliate against the last Israeli strike on their country. I think they call it True Promise 3. They carried out True Promise 1, True Promise 2. So, they, even using those terms, it certainly strongly implies that they really intend to do it. And apparently, I think just 2 days ago, maybe 3 days ago, a high-ranking Iranian official actually stated that, they're doing it. But so why has it taken so long? Well, I think there's, some possibilities is that, okay, they want to, before they get in an all-out shooting war with Israel and the U.S. inevitably, I think, they have to make sure that, they have all their ducks in a row. And we're talking about air defense above all. That may be part of it. But I think another part is that, these ceasefire negotiations became serious not long after they made, True Promise 3. And they did not want to upend those ceasefire negotiations. And now that the ceasefire is actually in effect and going forward, they don't want to provide Netanyahu with an excuse for breaching the ceasefire. So, again, they, according to this Iranian official and also Professor Morandi, they're certain they will do it, but they have to wait for the time, and this is not the time to do it. So let's say if Israel breaches the ceasefire in a major military way, goes back into Gaza, renews the attack on Gaza, then I think we probably see True Promise 3. So that's a kind of an outline.
Do you think that's where the flashpoint really is? Then is a re-engagement of the destruction of Gaza. I mean, it's already destroyed, but to sort of move back.
It's really there's not much more to destroy. It's just
just human lives, I guess. Right. And do you think that's more the flashpoint, or is it the West Bank, or is it southern Lebanon?
Yeah. Well, it could be any of them, to be honest. It could be all three. We'll see.
Do you think?
I think, again, it may be hard. I think Netanyahu really wants to go back in, but it's hard that now that he's pulled out to go back in for both domestic and international reasons, which we've discussed. So he may just, at least temporarily, direct his attention to the West Bank. That's something that, that's another goal. That's part of the Greater Israel Project. And then he still wants to get Iran. He's been, I think he was very frustrated. Like he felt like he had him, as that he could start that all-out war. But the Iranians were too patient, and then Trump got elected. And I believe there was some report that was leaked, I think, to Axios, one of those CIA linked outfits. So you never know, but said that there were actually talks, like within the Biden administration, they were considering an attack on Iran. They came very close to it, but it was partly undone, according to some reports, by the incoming administration, and said they didn't want that, and they weren't going to support that. So anyway, at least the Israelis, heard that and probably made them reluctant wanted to hold back. But they're always, Netanyahu is always looking for an opportunity to attack Iran and to renew a war with them. So that's just always there, as a possibility.
Right. Well, the Iranians must be aware of that. So if they did do the retaliation now, especially now that it's been, 3 months or more since that attack on Iran, that if this attack was carried out now, it would immediately give all the fuel Netanyahu needs to drum up a joint U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran.
Right. I think there would have to be some provocation by Israel, or just or a really obvious breach of the ceasefire. They renew the attack, or an all attack on the West Bank, and that would say, okay, that would kind of. That would provide them with the justification. They already have it, but it's kind of farther in the past and people are forgetting about it. So this will
exactly
be, right.
I think it's kind of they're waiting for that moment. If Israel goes in and blows up the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, or
really certainly in that case, yeah.
If they do that, the whole Arab world's going to erupt. The whole Muslim world will. But
they might. I mean, I don't see it happening soon, but they really might. There are forces in Israel that are very close to the center of power. I think we're talking about Ben Gvir that are part of that movement, and so it really could happen. I guess maybe I just want to say one comment. We can say more about Middle East, but just looking at the future of Israel, just thinking about it, I think in some ways, Israel is definitely, I'll have to admit, in a stronger position than it was overall, let's say 6 months ago, mainly because of the fall of Assad. But, again, it sees the strategically important territory. one thing about the land that it seized in Syria is that it's the source of something like 40% of the water in Syria, and I think like 30% of Jordan's water. Again, it just, they really have their, like a knife to the throat of these countries. So yeah, militarily they're in a stronger position. But you just look at the future of Israel, just not even considering these specific conflicts. It's just say, like, I think in the end that Israel's greatest enemy is itself. It's the crazies that are rising in power, and they don't know when to stop. They will push it to a point where the Egyptian government will fall, or the Jordanian government will fall, or if they go after the Al-Aqsa, they blow up the Al-Aqsa mosque, the whole Muslim world will turn against them and will throw caution to the winds. If they played their hand carefully, and Israel could last for decades to come, in spite of the obvious damage that it suffered. I think that it's put itself on a path of self-destruction. Eventually, it is going to fall, but it could last for quite a while if they're careful. But there are people in charge who are not careful, and we could see again just Israel self-destructing through extreme actions, even beyond what they've done in Gaza.
If they do something extreme, like blow up the Al-Aqsa Mosque or go back into Gaza and, re-engage in this ethnic cleansing, what looks a lot like a genocide to most of the world, if they re-engage into something like this, it's like, well, what's the objective at this point? You've already destroyed all the infrastructure. Well, what are we doing now? You're going through just dropping bombs on people that don't even have homes anymore.
Right.
It's such a...
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, you're right. What they would be doing is just ethnically cleansing Gaza and seizing the territory. I think there was always that idea that clearly was held by Netanyahu and some of his allies. They were going to take at least northern Gaza. And that was the plan. It looked like they were working to, but I think first of all, they found it harder than they thought. And the IDF was wearing down, and then they were getting pressure from the incoming administration, and then pressure again from the hostage supporters within Israel. So he had to just put that plan aside. But it's just sort of like the Iranian plan. It's always there, and it can be started up again at any time.
Do you think if something like this happens, if they go back into Gaza, they do something extreme in the West Bank, do you think that the U.S. will continue to stand by them? No, that the Israeli lobby has that strong of a hold that Trump, because Trump seems like a guy that what we've seen happen with Zelensky in Ukraine seems like he can change.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
Right, you're right. I remember like when we were talking about about Trump and what he might do. It's very cynical. I'm surprised that he's done so much, especially with regard to Ukraine and the relationship with Europe. But I always said, with Trump, there's always a chance. It's just like with Biden or Kamala Harris. You knew that they were just, I don't know what to say, like empty people. So they were just simply tools of the establishment, and they were never going to do anything, change policy in a significant way. That's who they were. They had kind of sold their souls to the establishment, and the establishment was dead set on these objectives, and that was it. But Trump is his own man, and he could, he's shown the capability to just change his mind and turn on people. And, the problem again with Palestine in particular and the Middle East in general is that he has aligned himself very closely. There's really no dissenting voice within his administration. Like you could point to people like J.D. Vance and Elon Musk and David Sachs and others, certainly Tulsi Gabbard, with respect to Ukraine. These are real dissenters. And he was talking to them. So there was reason to think that, okay, maybe maybe he could go this way, and it looks like he is going that way. We'll talk more about that later. But in the case of Israel, you just don't find this dissenters. The only one that I can think of who I believe is a true dissenter on Palestine and is within his inner circle is David Sachs, who I think does understand. I mean, even the comment he made at that, he was sort of made this ambiguous comment about Palestine, but it just seemed clear to me he knew what's going on. But he's, the only voice, and I don't know if he's actually spoken. He's just maybe made the out of prudence has decided that this is a fight we can't fight now, but maybe we can win on other fronts. So it doesn't look good. You don't have those dissenters, but you always have Trump. It just, Mark Sloboda calls him a chaos bomb, and he just could go off, He could even go off in Palestine. And there are just a couple of suggestions, it hints that, that he may not be completely on board with the Zionist project. One was that Jeffrey Sachs video that he put up on Truth Social.
Right.
Yeah, and he kept it up there I don't know if it's still up there, but it was up there for a long time. And then the other thing is that there was actually, I don't know how many years ago this was, but there was some interview where he was talking, he didn't quite say it out loud, but it was obvious what he was saying. And that is, look, I've talked to people on both sides, meaning both the Israelis and the Palestinians. And I thought that this one side was going to be really reasonable, the other wouldn't be, And I found out it was the opposite, he said. And he just sort of his eyes were getting real big. And you knew that what he was saying, it just seemed to me really obvious watching this, that, yeah, he actually did talk to Palestinians at one point and found that, they were very reasonable people and willing to make compromises and whatever. And they had a very good case. And it was the Israelis that were the fanatics. That's just essentially what he was saying. Now, this is from years and years ago, but there just may be, who knows with Trump? It may be that, with a lot of people, and I think you can say that with Tulsi Gabbard, for example, they just made the decision this force is Zionism is just too powerful. We can't fight it. And we'll just have to, we have to pick our battles. And it's true, politicians have to. And that politics is not a business for, let's say, philosophers or, idealists. Politicians understand that they have to pick their battles and make alliances with really unsavory figures and forces. But if you do it right, you can actually achieve the greater good. And maybe that's what's going on in his head, or maybe he's been fully convinced of the Zionist project at this point. I don't know. But he's surrounded by Zionists, and Zionism remains such a powerful, powerful force in this country that he just may be very, very, even if he gets really sick of Netanyahu and he starts to see that, oh God, I can't really even stand these Israelis anymore. He just might think, I just can't fight this fight. And he may go along with it.
Hey, thanks for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you haven't checked it out yet, please check out my website, nobliski.io. You can look at the pinned comment below. It's something that I think you'll find useful. Even my dad uses it. My wife uses it. Instead of Googling things, you should be using this website because you get access to OpenAI, Perplexity, Anthropic, DeepSeek. There's hundreds of models that you can use. It's what I use to create the thumbnail images, things like this. And the greatest thing about it is there's no rate limits. There are no subscription fees. It's free to try out and use. You get free tokens every day. So if you're not a heavy AI user, you will never have to pay for anything. But this is really my passion project. I really want to get it off the ground, and I think you guys would like it. So yeah, check it out. Let me know what you think. And if you have time to download the apps and give it 5 stars, that'd mean a lot to me as well. Thanks a lot.